Good morning. Hey, sis. Thank you for being here. Always the first one in, and thank you for sharing it out. I appreciate that a lot. I'm going to copy my link for coming on panel, and if anybody wants to come up, they can. Go ahead and right click that, paste it. Share it in the comments. There we go. That's done. Oh, so it is AA day. Not a lot going on around here other than talking about Sunday at work. What a boring day. Because I'm a moderate. I'm talking to YouTube over here. So y'all over here in Facebook already heard this. But yeah, so I'm on moderate duty and it was rather boring because I couldn't log into the computer, so I just sat there all morning. Second part of the day, I did some sorting stuff in the wellness center and then ended up going and doing tote cleaning. So, whatever. It was rather boring, but it is what it is. And I got paid for the day, so, it's a win-win, I guess, right? I see you. I'm like,
Do you need anything from Freddy's? Because I'm gonna go to Freddy's.
some pineapple.
Pineapple?
They're $5.
That's fine.
Get that mixed fruit one.
Okay.
Cantaloupe, watermelon, cantaloupe, all those. Anyways, so let's go ahead and get into today's meeting. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Checking on the comments over there. So if you're wondering where I get the steps and traditions, I get them in the steps and traditions book, right in the front. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a greater... Mike! Will you get me some more of those? Nerds. And get that. Some Starburst.
Just one bag of Starburst?
Yeah. Thank you. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. We are in the big book, and I always put in the description what we're reading, and the page number and story name. I'm in the 4th edition, so if you're in a different edition, it's probably going to be on a different page. That's why I say it's the name of the story and whatever. And please be mindful of each other and don't be judging each other in the chat or the comments. And please don't go to other people's channels and accuse them of being alcoholic because they may not be. And we are reading Grounded on page 522. Alcohol clipped this pilot's wings with sobriety, and hard work brought him back to the sky. I am an alcoholic. I am part Comanche Indian and grew up poor, but in a loving home until alcoholism took both my parents. Then the divorces came, 3 for each parent. Huh? Okay. And I learned the anger that is such a part of alcoholic life, family life. Sorry. I vowed I would never be an alcoholic. Active in my Indian community, I saw what the alcohol did there also, and I was repelled and disgusted by it. I graduated from high school at 17 and immediately left to join the Marine Corps. I found a home there, relishing the tough discipline, camaraderie, and esprit de corps. I excelled and was one of 3 who was promoted upon graduation from boot camp. 4.5 years later, I was given an opportunity to go into flight training. Success at the end of the 18th month period would mean pilot wings and an officer's commission. Again, I excelled. Although most of my peers had college educations and fear of failure constantly plagued me, I graduated near the top of my class. I excelled at something else also. Drinking was encouraged. The pilot persona was one of hard, gutsy flying with equally hard drinking, and attendance at happy hour was considered a duty. I did not need any encouragement and reveled in the squadron camaraderie, good-natured joking, and competition at these events. 1 year into my training, I reported for the final phase and met a young beauty. I was drunk the night I met her, and she would have nothing to do with me. But I could never have approached her without the false courage the alcohol gave me. The next day I saw her again, this time sober, and we began to date. I graduated from flight training on her 20th birthday, and she pinned my gold wings and my second lieutenant bars on me. We were married 2 weeks later. We have just celebrated our 35th anniversary, and she is the most wonderful person I could ever have found. We immediately had 2 young sons, and I left to go to war in Vietnam. 13 months later, I returned. I spent 11.5 years total time in the Marine Corps before deciding to get out because of the family separation my military career required. I had seen enough family chaos to know that I could never allow that to occur in my own family. So reluctantly, even painfully, I resigned my commission and joined a major airline. I had gained a reputation in the Marines I was proud of. I had many accomplishments to my and credit, a good combat record with decoration and skill as a pilot. Slowly, I worked my way up within the airline structure and finally became a captain after 20 years. It had been a strife ridden company, and our family endured some tough times. During one of the lengthy labor strikes, we adopted a baby girl. She completed our family, nearly half Chippewa Indian. She was a beautiful baby of 17 days when we took her home with us. My drinking continued to escalate, but I did not believe I was any different from my drinking comrades. I was very wrong. I had two charges of drinking under the influence, years apart, which I wrote off to bad luck, and I paid some handsome legal fees to get the charges reduced. This was years before the Federal Aviation Administration began cross-checking drivers' records against pilot licenses. One night after a hard afternoon and late evening of drinking, I and my two fellow flight crew members were arrested. We were charged with violation of a federal law that prohibits the operation of a common carrier while impaired. It had never been used against airline pilots before. I was devastated. Suddenly, I was thrust into an experience beyond my worst nightmare. I arrived home the next day, sick at heart and unable to look my wife in the face. Ashamed and destroyed, I saw two doctors that day and was diagnosed as an alcoholic. I was in treatment that night, going in with only the clothes on my back. The news media had picked up the story, and it was blared all over the world, on all the major television networks, and my shame and humiliation were beyond words. All the light in my life had gone out, and I entertained the idea of offing myself. I could not envision ever smiling again or having a day with a bright horizon. I was hurting more than I ever knew a human could hurt, and I just wanted the pain to end. I became notorious in commercial aviation and and the media had a field day with me. I lost my FAA medical certificate because my diagnosis of alcoholism, and the FAA issued an emergency revocation of all my licenses. I thought about my parents, now both dead, my Indian people, and all those I had previously considered alcoholics, and I knew I had become exactly what I vowed I would never become. I learned my career was over via the 6 o'clock news. 1 week after entering treatment, I refused to watch TV, but my fellow patients kept me informed. I was the lead story on the news for weeks. I was joke spotted for the late night TV comics as they ridiculed me, my profession, and my airline. I also learned I was going to federal prison The sentence was mandatory if convicted, and there was no doubt in my mind that I would be. With nothing left, I dedicated myself to learning about recovery. I fervently believed that the key to my sobriety and hence my survival lay in the power of all I was being taught. And I spent no idle moment in treatment. I worked so hard. I worked as hard as I have worked to earn my wings. But this time, my life was at stake. I struggled to regain a spiritual connection as I underwent one legal crisis after another. I got out of treatment determined to complete 90 AA meetings in 90 days, but was afraid my court date would interfere, so I completed my 90 meetings in 60 days. I went through an intense media-covered 3-week trial. On most evenings after the day in court, I fought the urge in AA meetings and renewed my strength for the coming day. Recovery and all I had learned allowed me to handle things much, much differently than my two codependents. Many spoke of my serenity throughout this experience of horror, which surprised me. Inside, I did not feel what others seemed to see. I was found guilty and sentenced to 16 months in federal prison. My two codependents received 12 months sentence and chose to remain free pending appeal, while I chose to go into prison and get it over. I had learned how to live life on life terms and not my own. From somewhere back in my high school days, I remember a poem that says something to the effect of, "Cowards die 1,000 deaths, a brave man only once." And I wanted to do that. Do what had to be done. I was terrified of walking into prison, but told my children that I could not come out the back door until I walked through the front. I remembered that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to continue in the face of it. On the day I entered prison, 9 of my fellow pilots began making our family's house payments, which they did for nearly 4 years after my release from prison. I made 4 attempts to get them to let us take over, and they refused each time. So many came to help us from places we could never have imagined. I served 424 days in the federal prison system. I started an AA meeting in prison, which was opposed by the prison administration, and they hassled us weekly as we came together to meet. The weekly meeting was a quiet oasis in the desert, a few moments of serenity in a prison full of bedlam. My prison term was followed by 3 years of probation, which restricted my travel and had 13 other conditions. Upon release from prison, no longer a pilot, I returned to the same treatment center where I had once been a patient, and worked full-time with other alcoholics. Pay was minimal, but I found I was effective at reaching others, and I wanted desperately to pay back some of what so many had given me. I did that for 20 months, For a long time, I did not consider flying again, but I could not purge the dream of doing so from my heart. One of my meditation books had said, before any dream can come true, there must first be a dream. I have been told in treatment if I wanted to fly again, I would have to begin at the very bottom with a private license. Even though I had previously held the highest license the FAA awarded, the Air Transportation Pilot License, I studied for and took all the lengthy FAA written examinations. I had to go back and relearn things I had learned 30 years before and had long since forgotten. I had unexpectedly been able to reacquire my FAA medical certificate after proving the quality of my sobriety for more than 2 years. The trial judge had put sanctions on me that made it impossible for me to fly again because of my age. My lawyer had become my friend and worked for 3 years after my conviction without taking a cent from me. He was one more person who entered my life in a manner I could only ascribe to some kind of divine providence. He took a motion to the judge to lift the sanctions, and the tears came flooding down my cheeks when he called to let me know the judge had approved it. With the lifting of those sanctions, the impossible became slightly less impossible. An extraordinary amount of work was left to do, but at least the attempt could now be made. None of my friends thought it possible to remain licenses literally from the ground up, but I had learned how to do many things one day at a time, one small step at a time. So I went after the license in exactly that manner. Had I chosen to view the whole persona of licensing requirements, I would have quit. They were simply too overwhelming. But one day and one thing at a time, they were doable. So I did them. I knew no one would ever hire me to fly passengers. I was an ex-con, a convicted felon, a drunk. I had doubts as to whether anyone would even allow me to fly cargo. It took several months for the FAA to process my license and mail them to me. On the exact day they arrived, another miracle occurred. I received a phone call from the head of the pilot union, who informed me that the president of the airline had decided personally to reinstate me. I had not pursued the legal grievances process I was entitled to because I knew my actions could never be defended or excused. I had steadfastly accepted responsibility in front of TV cameras and in the treatment center because my recovery demanded rigorous honesty. It was always beyond my ability to believe that the president of the airline could ever consider having me work for them again. I marveled at the courage of such a man and such an airline. What if I relapsed? What if I flew drunk again? The media would have a field day for days afterward, As I woke each morning, my first thought was that it had only been a dream, that it could not possibly have occurred. Almost 4 years after my arrest and the explosive devastation of my life, I signed my back to work agreement, restored to full seniority, giving the retirement I had lost. And once again, an airline pilot, a large crowd gathered to watch me sign the documents. So much had happened in my life, I lost almost everything I had worked to acquire. My family had suffered public shame and humiliation. I had been the object of scorn, shame, and disgrace. Yet much more had also happened. Every loss had been replaced with rewards. I had seen the promises of the big book come true in a magnitude I could never have imagined. I'd gotten sober. I'd regained my family, and we were once again close and loving. I had learned how to use the 12 steps and to live the wonderful program that was founded so many years ago by two drunks. It took several years, but I learned to be grateful for my alcoholism and the program of recovery it forced me into, for all the things that had happened to me, and for a life today that transcends and far exceeds anything I had previously known. I could not have that today if I had not experienced all the yesterdays. My back to work agreement said I would retire as a co-pilot, but the miracle is this program had never ceased for me. And last year I was notified that the president of my airline had granted permission for me to once again be a captain. I retired at age 60 and I checked out as a 747 captain, which means my final year at my airline concluded in the left seat. The circle so sacred to my Indian people will once again have been completed. I take little credit for all that has happened. I suited up and showed up, but the process of AA, the grace of a loving God, and the help of so many around me have been far more responsible for all the events in my life. Today, one of my sons has more than 3.5 years of sobriety after nearly losing his life to alcohol and drugs. He is truly one more miracle in my life for which I am so deeply grateful. I have returned to my Indian people once again after a long shame-filled absence. I am dancing again and returning to the old ways I left behind. I've spoken at 2 Native American AA conventions, something I never thought I'd see when I was a youngster growing up. Adversity truly introduces us to ourselves, but we need never deal with our adversaries or adversities alone as long as we can find another alcoholic in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, like him, the first paragraph jumps at me. I am an alcoholic. I am part Comanche Indian and grew up a poor in a loving home until alcoholism took both my parents. My parents drank. My mom really didn't drink often. My dad drank, maybe a couple of drinks at night after work because he worked in a warehouse on hard ground and all of that nonsense. Anyways, so they did not get divorced, thank God, but my mom and my birth father did. And my birth father was a raging alcoholic, and he abused me and my sister, and he abused my mom. So they got a divorce. So I understand what divorce is. It's not easy for kids to go jump from one parent to another parent, back and forth when the parents don't get along. So when I was almost 3, my mom and my dad got married. This is my daddy. He took care of me and my sister financially. Whenever we had troubles, we could go to him. We got punished by him, but he stepped up and was more of a dad than our father. But anyway, so we did go through the divorce thing between our birth father and our mother, or mom. I don't usually call her mother, but she doesn't like it. I didn't do well at school. I dropped out in 8th grade. I finished the 8th grade and then I dropped out. So I didn't really finish at a school per se. I do have a diploma, however, and I do have a certificate for early childhood education, but they weren't credited, so I can't go to college with them. Who knew, right? Anyways, but I had two boys, and I didn't want to become the alcoholic, but I became the alcoholic in my 30s, and my kids were grown. No, not adults, but they were teenagers, and so they saw everything I went through, and how it is to be an alcoholic just like him. My kids watched it. But then I didn't ever really work an actual job until 8-9 years ago. Maybe it was longer. It's been longer than that. I think it's been about 10 years now. Yeah. That I got my first full-time job. It was seasonal, but it was full-time. Well, it was season, I'm making good money. And it was after I got sober. So when I first got sober, I didn't go to AA. My friend was like, meet me at a meeting. So naturally I did. But I didn't think that AA was going to help. It wasn't going to do me any good, and I was just going to see a friend. And that's exactly what I had planned. But finding out that there are other people like me in these rooms made it easier for me to be able to go and become part of this family. I call AA my family because they have become my family, Especially my sponsor has become my family. But I do have some of my friends that I just up and wrote off like the friend that invited me to that meeting. I hadn't seen him for a long time, and I didn't know he was an alcoholic. So, but I thank him every day for that, and he knows it. So it says, my drinking continued to escalate, but I did not believe I was any different from my drinking camaraderies. So my drinking escalated, and I drank a lot with my sister and her husband. My husband really didn't drink a lot. Sometimes he had a couple of drinks, but not like us. But alcohol made us mean, me and my sister, that is. But I think that it opened our eyes to see exactly why our father was the way he was, abusive, verbally, emotionally, physically, and in ways that daddies should not be. But it it took a while for AA to hit me too. Yeah. All the light in my life had gone out, and I entertained the idea of suicide. I could not envision ever smiling again or having a day with a bright horizon. I was hurting more than I ever knew a human could hurt, and I just wanted the pain to end. I was there for a while. Yep. So the first time I got sober, I was watching TV, and a commercial came across for depression. Now it runs in my family, so I was like, maybe that's my problem. Because I really never told anybody that I was depressed about anything, because the alcohol was hiding it, so I thought it was just making my emotions all out of whack. But so yeah, I got out of treatment determined to complete 90 AA meetings in 90 days, but was afraid my court date would interfere, so I completed my 90 meetings in 60 days. I didn't do the 90 meetings in 90 days. I didn't do that. But I did when I first started going to AA. I started going to 2 meetings a week. And I have a home group besides this one. This is my service work, doing these meetings. But I did go to meetings twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, because there was, or 4 times a week, right? There's 2 meetings at home group. There's a meeting at Eagle Creek. There's a meeting anyways, there was 4 or 5, and I did go to NA meetings for support of a friend of mine. So that I did too. I went to a couple of those. But there's help everywhere, you guys. Absolutely everywhere. And if you're a newcomer, you're welcome to be here and you're welcome to be in meetings and you don't have to talk. I didn't for quite a while. I didn't go into prison. I didn't get arrested or anything. So I can't relate on that one. Knock on wood. Um so doing the meetings and all those things, it can put things into a positive way of going. Things can get better once you're sober, and a lot of people that have businesses will understand and they will work with you. Some of them, not all, some of them will work with you as long as you're, being honest and going to meetings or what have you and proving that you're sober to your employer and able to pass a UA on a whim. Because you never know when a UA is going to come up. Hey, sis. But she lifted the sanctions on him, and that could impact somebody a lot in the positive. And like him, I have AA to thank for my sobriety and my friends and family and meetings for me staying sober and my dedication to staying sober. I don't have a day that I want to have a drink. However, I do have those days when I'm craving a cigarette. And it's been 2 years and 3 months. Yes, I still have that craving. Even though it makes me feel icky, it still makes me, I want a cigarette, but I'm not giving in to it. I can't. My health is not good as it is, and I don't need to have a cigarette to add to it. So, but anyways, guys, I think that's going to be the meeting. I love you, and remember, Google AA meetings if you need a meeting. They're everywhere, even on cruise ships. So download your Daily Reflections app. They have all the readings and all of that, and it helps. So with that, I love you guys. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys. Come on, Andy. My phone's being a pain. Love you guys.